Awesome. And I forget who's leading demos today. I don't.
That's gonna be me.
Yep, that's Kevin.
So, I guess what have you all been up to? We don't have a strict issue to go off of here, but we'd love to get a demo of what you've been working on. I know we've seen some sneak peeks for logos and branding, and I'm not sure who of the collabs wants to lead that off, but
maybe design would be a good way to start, as in your designs, how you landed, and then we could talk about, we could save like the planning of issues for later.
okay, yeah.
Just so that I want to give us a lot of time to talk about accessibility, because we have a special guest, EJ Mason, who's gonna give us an advance learning module. So
Great. So let's talk about design then.
Yeah, so let's see. So we did a whole bunch of stuff this week. Let me share my screen. Yes. Okay. Can y'all see that?
Yes. Wow.
So we did some name brainstorming, and we did like a mood board. So we put like a bunch of different examples that we liked from different sites. And while we also did that, Connie created these great wireframes, and we did like some rounds of feedback on these. So we have like all sorts of different views, and we came up with ideas about how we wanted the UI to be. I'm not sure how to move this around very well, but yeah. If you want Connie to show, I think Connie's here somewhere off my screen to show this stuff, you could do that, or I can just kind of keep.
Yeah, Connie,
if we don't want to share anything about your process.
Yeah, sure. So this was fun for me just because like at work, I'm always like working with UX designers, but not really actually doing the UX designing. So this was like a fun exercise for me. Really just wanted to like, I think looking even at the existing app, there's things like we want to make clear to users about how the app works. So that was the biggest thing. So like we have the homepage, which we wanted to keep pretty simple there. It links off to like a page where it explains how the app works, because I think it's not immediately intuitive, like how all the sorting works and things like that, and exactly what you're doing, especially if you're creating a new list and you don't have a lot of items, if somebody were to kind of come to our app. So we wanted to make that clear. Then for the list, there's definitely little enhancements and things that we've added, again, to try to really make a good user experience. So for example, like explaining why you can't check an item again after it's already been checked. Like we're going to be showing a bit of language that explains that, it's because you have to wait 24 hours. We kind of decided on a way to indicate the soon, kind of soon, not soon, inactive, and had a lot of different iterations of how that could be communicated. We realized like the wireframes don't have a way of like sharing the app token, and it's actually not displayed anywhere. We don't even really communicate that to the user. So like we've added that feature. And then we explored different ways of like displaying the item details, the details of the item, like, number of purchases and like the predicted purchase date and things like that. And we kind of redid how you add an item so that it shows up in a like in a panel that comes out, so that you're not taken away from the list, because we kind of found that was like kind of disjointing for the user experience. Like you know, when you add an item, you don't really see it being added to the list. And I think it's nice to still have the list in view when you're adding an item. So we've kind of changed that to be a panel instead of like a separate almost page, like we have it in the wireframes. And then of course, doing wireframes is nice to kind of make sure that everything's working well on mobile as well, and just make sure things stack and things like that. So this is a really fun exercise, and I think we've definitely made a lot of good like improvements to the user experience, because I think even sometimes for me, I'm even confused sometimes about how the app is supposed to work. So we wanted to make sure users aren't confused.
Yeah, and I think we did a lot of focus on functionality at the same time as doing design. So we kind of we had these wireframes and we all gave feedback. And then I think this is like our current kind of working. We just put in some very like rough styles. Whoops. We don't have quite everything that we've been working on, but we have things like this little copy area in the corner where you can like copy your token to the clipboard. And we have like some of this will be, oh, I don't think this is hidden, but we have one branch where there are details that are shown in line. We have like these color-coded checkboxes with the SVGs. I think if I go to the front page, is there something else that we did? I'm trying to think of all the little details. Oh yeah, if you try to check something again, I think we have, oh, I can't do it in this list because everything is already checked off. Like we can now uncheck things. That's something we added. And if I go to a different list, it looks like everything has not been checked today, but let's see if there's some things on this other list. I want to show the message. So like this is something that's already been checked. If you try to check it, it explains why you already purchased this in the last 24 hours. So you understand what is actually happening and why you can't uncheck something. So just a lot of little UX kind of things. And we tried to test them for accessibility as well, although I think we probably work on that. And then we did some different rounds of logo and naming design. We had like these 2 name concepts and did different logos and settled on PZ, and then have been just doing like mock-ups of the front page and kind of like deciding that we want this like illustrated look, and then doing more specific mock-ups. It's kind of where we're at, is just like perfecting little details now.
That's awesome. I'm really glad you all put so much time into designing and coming up with a theme and a mood before writing code, because already it really shows. Even in the little CSS things that you've done, it really stands out and comes through, and this is looking great. I'm super excited to see the final product next week.
Yeah, and when we wrote a bunch of just basic layout CSS to get started on the wireframes and use CSS variables so that we could change things as we settled on colors and like button roundness, etc. So yeah,
Great.
It's been a really fun process.
I'm curious, did you use a CSS framework or anything, or are you using Material UI or something like that, or is this all custom?
It's all custom. We kind of started early on, like it's probably partly my influence of really liking to do custom CSS and having a lot of control. But we started on early, kind of following a bit of like a BEM methodology, like block element modifier convention for naming all of our different things and thinking of things as blocks. And so we've been putting in those types of classes as we've been going through and building everything. So now that we're styling, we're making some small adjustments, but we have that kind of pattern that we've been using. And now, like, as we're starting to go through style, we're just kind of making different blocks and reusable things. Like we have a button class, and then we can have different specific types of buttons. We have like a button primary. So then it's really easy to just plug in all of the like different UI elements, styles across the site.
That's great. That's great. Yenli and April, I'm sure you have more, so I'll sit quietly for a second.
I think this is fabulous. It's very pro looking. One question is, I'd like to know the story behind Peasy. Why did the team pick the name?
I think we did like a name brainstorming, and maybe other people want to share. We basically made 3 columns. One with like just random words about the food theme because it's a grocery list. One with words about like the functionality of the app, like the fact that it's a list, the fact that it predicts things. One with like benefits of it, like, oh, it's easy to keep track of your list. It's like super simple to use. And then just tried to like come up with different names that would smush them together. So with the idea of like we had a whole bunch of different ones and some like kind of more appy names. I think the reason that I at least like leaned towards these names was that they kind of, with the logo, ticked the boxes of showing like something about a benefit, something that's food themed, and something that like shows a list. Like in both our logos, we have like check boxes, and Sage is like the kind of idea that, you know, it's predicting things, but also a food. And like Peasy is like, oh, it's like easy to use and it sounds kind of cute and fun. And it also has a food theme and like a good color. So I think we settled on Peasy in the end because we just decided we kind of liked the fun, light theme. And yeah, we just like kind of went through, did a ton of brainstorming, and then did lots of like rounds of feedback, and in the end we all kind of gravitated towards like, we like these buttons, we like this style logo, and we like etc., all of these ways of doing things. So we're just kind of continuing from there and building out the last little pieces of functionality while styling.
Very well done. I can definitely see that this final product or this final design really speaks to how the team works and just how everybody's on the same wavelength.
Yeah, that's kind of to the point that I wanted to make. I mean, one of the things that's been really great about watching your guys' communication from beginning till now is that like you've kind of already placed that forward thinking mentality into this project. And so the fact that you set your CSS styles and everything with the anticipation that you were going to be using that system, so that now that you're there, it's already in place for you. But I think it feels like from the way you communicate about that even making these decisions was fairly straightforward and not too conflicted. You know, these design choices are very personal and it can get very heated when you're down to the final decisions of, no, I like this one, and no, but this one's better. Or, but I think it also is just a reflection of the process that you guys have carried with you from the beginning. So it's really cool to see this all coming together. Like, great work.
Yeah, I think it helped to have different variations, because then once you kind of saw things in action, we you know, it was easier to make decisions.
Yep.
I have one more question for you. So the only form of quote unquote auth that we seem to have for this app is the token. Have you thought about hiding that at all through one step? Are you worried about who owns it and who can see the token? Is that something that was considered, or is that?
I mean, we haven't really thought too much about that, because, you know, it's kind of like, we could do that for sure. We've kind of talked about how we would like to have different auth, like we would like to have user accounts and make it a little bit more, etc. But yeah, we could totally make it only visible, like maybe we have like an eye or something. Like,
And I would like to acknowledge that I am nitpicking at this point. I was just wondering if that was something.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, like, without like a lot of specific issues, it's a little bit like of a, we're trying to figure out like the best way to do things, and looking at like what some other various teams have done. And but that is like kind of a good suggestion, maybe, to just have like kind of a show hide. But we're still like, we're not 100% finished with how that little section is going to look as it is right now. Like, I think was just working on this. So Sheila and I did a bunch of work on that. And then Nick made a really good suggestion about putting a check mark. So I think we're still putting on like some details. Like we still have like a lot. This is probably going to look slightly different in the end. And we do have like kind of a mobile button so that it isn't always visible. So maybe we would do something similar, like,
yeah, I mean, I think there's some value to just even just having it say share your shopping list with the copy button or the share logo. And then, you know, maybe with some, I don't know, instructions or something like to copy this to somebody, or I'm not sure, but
yeah, like this could be hidden.
Yeah.
And then I would like to provide some space. EJ, if you have some comments that you'd like to make on this while you're here as well.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize the meeting by any chance. So if anyone wants to stop me at any time, please just do. I can talk a lot for free. So first of all, a great job. This is genuinely, I've been sitting here just like bouncing, looking at these designs and listening to how you talk about your work. So great job, everyone. I am so proud of all of you. I know you don't know me, so that might not mean anything, but here I am, very proud of you, very verklempt about it. I do have some things I could see that could be improved while we're thinking about them, if you'd like. What would be helpful for you? If you have questions, I can start with those. I'm open, go ahead. Anyone? I can start calling names, I'll do it.
I mean, I think we have some questions about just like the exact rights. We haven't put in like completely finalized everything, but the exact right accessibility markup for, and I'd have to pull up the code, so I think I'm on a different branch, but I haven't saved anything. But for showing and hiding certain areas, like we have like role region on the area that is not shown, and we have like expanded, ARIA expanded on the button, and like a bunch of things like that. We have labels on all of the different buttons. So this, we've tested a lot in screen readers, but there's like a lot of little things. So I'd be interested to hear if you have like suggestions.
I can dig into that in a second. I do want to get the other things out of the way that I haven't seen mentioned. Can I ask for some clarity here on the, do I see two different greens on this screen, or is it just that my eyes aren't adjusted to the greens that are happening? Or is it, like, I can't tell, is it one green?
It is
okay.
Two different greens, like kind of, so this is like a subtle thing that one of the things we really struggled with was how to show, there's like different like soonness of the items,
the probability that you're buying something soon, right? That's what you're,
yeah, like in kind of like fairly arbitrary categories. And so we have like, I think 3 slightly different greens, which are all tested for icon, AA, you know, color, etc. But like, I do agree that the color is not necessarily going to be like super distinguishable. So I think that the idea is like, we were trying to think of how to, what we didn't want to do is have like a very rainbow looking, really ugly colors. And it's kind of very, like, it's a kind of a secondary, more of a, we were thinking of it as kind of a secondary, more visual, like nice thing, but the sorting of the list is also always evident regardless of your color stuff. So it's more of a mild enhancement in my thinking. That's kind of like, I do agree that it isn't ideal in terms of the colors are not necessarily going to be like as distinguishable. It's a subtle design versus a important UX thing.
Yeah, I asked partly because this information is only available to us if we can see the colors at all.
Exactly. But I can't show you this now, but we do have details that show you specifically all of the information. So even a more fine-grained, and the information of what order things are in, like the soonness, is also shown in the order that things are in the list.
Right.
So,
aren't they ARIA labeled too under like
yes, they are ARIA labels.
When they do like travel to there, they have an ARIA label that will say not to be bought soon or something.
The irony though is that at this same level, in this exact same view, those of us who are sighted and using keyboard and mouse don't have that information.
Yeah, 100%.
And so you would want to, everything I'm saying is also me nitpicking. So you know, this is all just like me trying to find reasons to talk about the application rather than thinking there's something seriously wrong here. But I have a bias toward just putting text in stuff to explain what things mean, because I have done a lot of work in cognitive accessibility. which is all about how people don't always understand the patterns that we take for granted on the web or in software applications. And we, those of us who do computer all the time, tend to overestimate the value of iconography to people who don't know how UX patterns usually work. And so I'm not saying that you should abandon all your iconography, but that you should interrogate them very meaningfully to ask if they actually are meaningful and they do explain themselves, because I see that you are trying very hard to explain what your app is and what it does and how to do it. And so are you missing something with like how the UI is relying on assumptions or relying on icons to explain what these greens mean, right? That's it.
I agree, EJ. Actually, that was something that spotted out to me, and I didn't mention it just because I know that you guys are still in the fleshing out stage. But but yes, the distinction between the greens is a little too subtle in order to deliver clear indication of that.
Right.
As EJ said, is it my eyes or are those different colors?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it doesn't help that you can't see the other ones. Like I can show you the kind of mood board one that we really liked, and part of the issue is, because maybe this would help you to see what we were kind of going for. We really liked this task, like the way that it's just very subtle. But one of the problems that we ran into is that doing this in practice, because we're trying to make all of our colors have enough contrast to be able to see the check mark, the subtle differences are very subtle. So it's something that we're kind of like, you know,
if I were playing PM on this, I would almost then suggest that we abandon gradients of soonness and go into strict categories of soonness, so that you can, one, choose distinct colors, and two, choose distinct textual labels, or choose distinct iconography if you have to go with that route. Because I know that there's also tension between the space of a desktop app and the space of a mobile app, which is why we tend to leave. But
one thought too is if you grab secondary colors that you use like within the app in small spaces as accents, then when they're on that list, they're not as dramatically different because they still kind of fold into the design. Is a thought too.
All this also is grain of salt. I'm not asking anyone to take any of my advice and use it as gospel by any means. I'm just thinking out loud. I want to have a brainstorm with all of you while I'm here. So I guess my main point is that we've got a lot of color only things happening, and otherwise a very informative and very thoughtful application. And we can guard against that now while we're planning out what the white space looks like and where stuff belongs, so that we're not stuck with trying to fix it later, you know?
So but when you're saying about the strict categories, actually all the items do kind of already have that. Like we do, there are basically 4 categories, and they should all still have that property of like soonness of, you know, I think it's by soon, by not so soon, and then like by you know, not very soon, and then inactive. Which you see is the gray there.
Yeah.
So we do have, they do have like something that we could, you know, display as a label.
I think the
ahead.
other thing is we were kind of, I think that we've talked a lot about how like the arbitrariness of the categories is not in any way communicated to the user. So how helpful is the information of like, if you need to buy this like soon versus not soon, like they don't know how many days that means, or it's it's different than the different things that you choose when you create an item. So we thought that like it might be more helpful, and we are changing a lot of these icons actually for part of that reason, like the different shapes we've been working on that, but we thought that it might be more helpful to just have like inline item details that show specifically what the next date you're estimated to purchase it is, and to just keep the, you know, like the color coding thing is something that's kind of a suggested thing, but part of like the like abandoning that being a huge focus is that we felt like it made the user experience more unintuitive and confusing versus just like the ordering of things by the things that you need are going to like sooner are going to be at the top, but why does the color necessarily changing, like if this is 6 days and this is 7 days, like but then this is 14 or this is 28 days, like these are the same color, so it's kind of more of a pride thing. It's really, that's I think what part of why we've kind of gone with, and I don't have the details, but saying like next purchase estimate date, last purchase estimate date, number of purchases. So it's something we've been thinking about for sure. So it is helpful to kind of
Yeah,
you know,
I think to go with
control.
what I see about how you want to explain everything very well to your user. I love the wireframe that had the onboarding with the exact like breakdown of what the app does and why it does it. To keep that spirit up, you just want to add more clear text to more parts of your UI, I think.
And as far as like what the colors mean, that can be a part of that documentation. So that when the user's like, I don't, and then they go to that learn more page, they can be like, oh, I understand. And then now they know, now they can at a glance see in those colors.
I would actually even assume that there can be no color. If I were again being the PM on this, which I'm not, I would say pretend you can't use color for any information at all. And if you wanted to have it be, I liked when Ender said vibe, like an enhancement. So pretend you can't attach any meaning to the color at all, because you don't want to assume that that makes sense to somebody, because either they can't see the color or they aren't used to relating color to meaning, right? So pretend you can only use text or iconography. And I would leave on text because that's something that the person who can read the language would immediately understand, and it wouldn't be ambiguous. And then design your app that way, which I know is also a very strict take on the design. So again, don't freak out. I'm not trying to say you have to do everything over again or anything like that. But that's just my take on how color should be used. It should be used as the augment to the unambiguous information provided by something that is a shape.
Yes, and I do kind of agree with that. Like I'm thinking of this color as like an enhancement and not relevant. And I think even if we do have an explainer that says like the green gets slightly lighter when it's like after 7 days, like no one's going to remember that. It's so arbitrary. It's kind of not. It's just, but having the details and you know, we did kind of try, like I'm going to show if I can find the other branch that I have here. But like the details that we have, and we're going to have like a little arrow drop down. So we thought that would be clearer. Like there's a choice between, do we want to show all the details for the next purchase date, last purchase date, like those things here, or do we want to have it so that you can kind of show and hide it? And the reason that we went with this, which does have less text, is because we were thinking the primary use of this app, especially on like a mobile, is going to be like you go to the store, you want to see what items at the top of your list you might need to buy. You don't necessarily care that much about the other information. Like the thing you care the most about is that your list is sorted in the right way from my thinking, but you might want to see very specific details. And if you want to do that, it's there, but is it helpful or is it a hindrance to show it? Like here's the, I have to turn it off of hacker mode because I have light sensitivity. Here's the other one. So we have and this is also like just rough style, but we have this view. So this is like all of the information. These aren't the actual dates yet, but we've got this is the in progress PR for one of the other things. So this is like the full information view. So like I'm like the accessibility side, I'm thinking of both ends of, to me, this is less accessible too, in that it's like so much information that I maybe don't need, especially if I'm using a phone, but definitely I want to have it. But like, I'm really interested in feedback on that, because that's been my train of thought is like, what is the use of this and how can we make it
so
clear?
Given unlimited time and money, which I know we all have, I would suggest that we go with an option to change the UI to default to one or the other for the person who does or does not want the more information. Because like you said, there's tension between the cognitive impact of having a bunch of information and the cognitive impact of not having enough information, depending on the person's interests and the person's sort of mental model of their shopping list. I would probably prefer, once I know the application, to hide all the information, so I know, because I know what it means. But if I'm learning, I might prefer to see everything until I know what the behaviors are and what the sorting means, and I get it, right? So the biggest thing you can do if you have, again, time and money, is to give the user choice about your UI, which also can in itself lead to clutter, because a lot of choices mean that you have a lot of options. But one toggle, I don't think would make or break the experience.
No, that's a great suggestion, actually. And I think we should make an issue, because it would be so simple to just have like a show all or something button.
Show details.
And then we could, yeah, exactly. Just like show all the details, like somewhere in here at the top of the thing. So
on this note, I would also I have a bias against hiding stuff, like for the same reason that I try to say that showing more information is valuable. people don't often know what disclosure menus mean. Like the 3-dot menu, I know you said you're moving away from that, which is great. Doesn't often really mean anything to most users who test for it, because we assume, again, as computer users, that has meaning to someone, but usually those don't convert well. So that's just a note, is that the other value of showing information is that hiding stuff usually means people don't ever see it.
Yeah. So a button might help with that, like a specific show all details button. And then like an arrow might be a bit more intuitive, potentially. Yeah.
Maybe even it's even like a hide details button, like it shows by default and then you can hide it.
On desktop, maybe too, like, because we have more space.
And these are all things that, again, given unlimited time and money, I would love to have a user test, like a real user test, to give feedback to someone who is not trying to design the application, because they would probably tell you whether they like or hate these different options. And so if you were working with a company that had money, I would be telling everyone who was in charge of you to pay you to do real studies, because that's the most valuable thing. I'm saying stuff as an expert, but not as a user. And the users are much more important than me.
Well, I can say just off the top that the 3 dots threw me, and it was the ARIA label that actually let me know what it was.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Thank you for backing me
We've
up.
already abandoned that. This is just what we have for placeholders. So
Yeah.
I'm very sorry to interject, because this is clearly not a finished discussion, but I do want to be cognizant of time for the learning module and questions around that as well.
Sure.
So I don't know if maybe we want to get a thread started in Slack to continue.
Yeah, I would be happy to make space to asynchronously discuss more things, and I want to yield time to the module. So thank you for calling it out. I will yield. I'm done now.
But I do think that everything that was discussed here is valuable to everyone in this arena. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So on that note, I don't know, EJ, if you want to take over sharing for the learning module.
You know, I really hope I have the module, because I'm on a new computer this morning, because why wouldn't I be? Why wouldn't I use a computer that's all set up for everything? If anyone else has it and can do it, I would prefer to do that and to sort of interject, just because I don't think I have all the permissions I need to do everything. And I'm very sorry about that. I realized that as soon as I sat down to join this meeting, and that I had messed up. So,
Are you pulling it up, Yan Lee?
Sorry, I'm opening Chrome. I'm in the wrong browser. So.
I'm even happy to, if someone wants to just be the person who pushes the slides apart, I can kind of talk about the slides, but I don't have the speaker notes. So if that matters to those of you who are behind the curtain, I'm happy to yield the speaking time to someone who has a more behavioral computer than I have.
If from previous modules, I don't know that there's usually typically a lot of speaker notes. I think they're usually all on the slide. So
cool. Whichever all of you would like, because I mean, I'm happy to turn the module into more of a forum than a lecture. It really depends on what all of you would like to get out of having me here. I am at your disposal. So.
So I shared the link to the docs, and I think it should be
thank you so much.
with everybody. Yeah.
Well, I think I can share this. Watch me not be able to share my screen. Wouldn't that be fun?
Otherwise, I do have it open if we need it.
Cool, and I apologize again for the delay. I'll figure something out. Cool. I'm gonna wing it, everyone. I hope you all enjoy improv. That's what you're about to get. Oh no, I cannot share my screen.
Okay. Yeah,
oh wow.
Cameron's got you.
Let me share my screen. You can cue me when to go to the next slide, and then we'll go from there.
Also very professional, just saying next. Thank you.
Are you all able to see that?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Do you want to hit present mode?
I will try, but that one will whack you.
Cool.
So good?
Thank you so much, Cameron. Cool. Yeah, I'm good. Everyone else good?
Yep.
Cool. So this module, as everyone might have guessed by now, as I dropped my headphone, please excuse me, is about accessibility. Imagine that. Go ahead and go to next. Now, it's important to note that you'll see accessibility often shortened to the numeronym A11Y, and that's because of the number of letters between the A and the Y. Next. This long definition from Wikipedia, which I would ordinarily read if I had practiced it more, is one of the most useful sort of summaries of what accessibility is. And basically, it is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent someone from interacting with or accessing websites on the World Wide Web. The disabilities we're trying to cover when we talk about these things include physical disabilities that are permanent, situational disabilities, and socioeconomic restrictions like bandwidth and speed. In some countries, it costs a lot of money to download a complex web app, and so you're harming that user by restricting their ability to keep using the web, or even making it hard for their phone or desktop to function because they have low-powered machines. These links that are all here are highly valuable. I would suggest that you check them out on your own time. If you have questions, feel free to ask me at any point. The two big bodies of standards that we kind of think about when we're working with accessibility are the Section 508, which is our legal requirements for accessibility for government bodies and public institutions. And then the W3C maintains the WCAG, which is a non-governmental normative standard set that 508 now aligns to. And other countries and other jurisdictions now have other similar alignments to WCAG. Any questions about all this? Cool. So some people access the web using assistive technologies like screen readers or magnifiers or Braille keyboards. You also have things like sip and puff machines. You have so many cool things. There's now, I think, in macOS, there's like new default voice dictation that's built into the OS, which is very cool, and I have not tried. But you can use your voice to break the UI of your computer into discrete identifiable controls. You can say click X, click Y, click Z. You can dictate text. It's very interesting. And the most popular screen readers you'll see on the web for computer devices include NVDA, JAWS, and VoiceOver. NVDA and VoiceOver are both free. NVDA is an open source project that you can download to Windows. VoiceOver comes with macOS. Any questions before we move on? Cool. Next, please. Why? First of all, it's the right thing to do to provide equitable access to information. It is a civil right that people with disabilities can access the web in the same way that you and I can. You may be legally obligated, like I just said, to make your website accessible, because going back to Section 508 or other legal burdens you might have in certain jurisdictions. And this is a fun one. More people in the US access websites with AT than live in the entirety of Canada. Quote that to your friends if they're trying to deny you how important it is to make web accessible. 20% of website visitors have some sort of disability. I have physical disabilities, but for the most part, I use the web in the way that the quote unquote default sighted mouse using, keyboard using person would use. However, I am developing new sensitivity to motion and to high contrast changes. And that has been eye-opening even for me, even after professionally doing all this for several years now, half a decade, who knows how long time is. Just keep that kind of stuff in mind. Go ahead, next. This sort of pamphlet by Microsoft is the persona spectrum. It offers a way to think about different contexts for disability. The first column is the permanent disability, the idea that someone has something that they cannot change by situation or context. The middle column is temporary, like a broken arm or ear infection. The third thing is situational. And all these things show that we can go through various modes of being, which would change the way that we interact with software and with computer systems. Now, it's really important to recognize that while we are designing for everybody, because everyone deserves the right to use the web, we must also be particularly thoughtful about who is most often systemically excluded from the web and why. And those people are the ones who are permanently disabled, the ones who can never approximate the quote unquote ideal user that we assume is the person we're targeting. And we don't want to lose sight of that when we talk about why it's important to do the right thing. Next. The how is a huge can of worms, as we've sort of previously discussed in the first part of this meeting. The first how is to, if we're going to identify some basic steps, we want to use valid semantic HTML. We want to always include alt attributes for our images. We want to use ARIA attributes if necessary and when necessary, which isn't always, or even most times. We want to ensure that all content is reachable by the keyboard. We want to ensure that all the tab ordering makes sense. We want to use good color contrast. And as we sort of discussed earlier, again, don't use only color. Look at that, it comes up. And on the right, we have a quote. Oh, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge the quote. The best ARIA is to use no ARIA at all, because sometimes we tend to complicate things by trying too hard with ARIA. It doesn't mean ARIA is bad. It means that we might make something less good than it was before we added the ARIA in the first place. Go ahead. Thank you. So another part of how is identifying issues for remediation in the first place. We have tools such as Axe, which is a good start, but finds only on average 30% of issues or so. We can do guided audits, which sort of are a way to talk back and forth to an audit system to build a complex report. And one of the best tools for that that's free is Accessibility Insights by Microsoft, which is a desktop application for Mac for Windows and also a browser plugin for everybody else. And the most important thing is audits by actual testers with actual disabilities, and those can be facilitated by numerous agencies, but the biggest one in the space is Fable Tech Labs. They have a whole system for sort of scheduling time with disabled users who can give you feedback. It's very valuable. And if you can at some point in your career work with actual disabled testers, I would highly recommend it. Next. And this demo, the thing about this demo is I don't have the machine I usually have. And again, I'm very sorry about that. So I'm happy to yield this time now and spend more time talking to everyone here about things that they would have for their app. But with that, I just wanted to leave a bunch of resources in this when I looked at this like 6 months ago. So feel free to again browse all these links at your own time and ask me questions anytime on Slack. My username I think is just EJ. So yeah, that's really good I think for this deck. And 1 second while I get the other half of my headset now, please. I'll be right back.
I'm going to post this slideshow in Slack right now, so you all will have that as well.
Cool. Thank you for letting me speed through that. Obviously, I'm a professional. Thank you. Any other questions about the overall presentation, or if we want to go back to talking about your app, or questions for me in general? I have whatever you want. I'm here to talk about.
I had just a quick one. I saw on that last slide something about the least accessible website in the world. I was wondering which one that was, if you remember.
I don't remember, but we can all discover together by looking at the links.
I think it's Domino's, is it?
Domino's?
Yeah, it was Domino's. Domino's has made, to their credit, they've made some significant strides to try to remediate the fact that they got sued.
I was gonna say court orders actually have a big motivation.
Although I want to point out that this link is done by, or this article is done by the government, the UK government design system people, and they have done some really cool work in building a design system for public service, which is one of the most ultimate stress tests in building something that's used by many people. And so if you want to look at a good design system, I recommend looking up their design system and seeing why they did certain things that they did.
So I'm actually not going to share it because it's a blog post. It's not the actual website that is the least accessible, just so you know.
Yeah. It's a reference to, I think, the issues that Domino's previously had that got them sued, which is a whole can of worms. Any questions or anything you have for me, whether it's about the app or accessibility in general? I'm, like I said, I'm here. I know things. I don't really know how to monologue until I'm prompted. So.
I know, I think I mentioned to y'all before, but I recently worked doing kind of a self-audit of our application and going back through and kind of making sure that we had better accessibility to our pages and things like that. And it was really eye-opening to me because as myself in my earlier career of developing, I was so focused on just getting things done, getting it working, getting it done, learning how to do it. And so I kind of kept pushing that off to the side. And then when I had to dive into it from a work level and I was looking at our application from that point of view, it was just jarring. How, not necessarily even our app, but as I was floating around and looking at others, like how difficult it is when it doesn't work, when it's not set up. Like just, it's really, it's not good.
I do want to point out from if a piece of personal experience can help sort of ground this discussion. As an adult disabled professional, it can be very terrible and gross feeling to try to be at work and use something that's not designed to be used by you, and the impact that can have on somebody. So even not just as a user, but even as a professional trying to do a job at work, if there's an internal tool that is not meant to be used by someone like you, it can really feel infantilizing, which is just one way that sort of makes this a very important discussion, because I think people forget that disabled adults are professionals with jobs. They think of them as children. They think of them as people who are sort of infantilized by culture in general. But no, when you build stuff that sucks, you tend to also be excluding people who sit next to you at work. I just remembered something that I saw that I think Yenli tagged me in. Andrew, you were asking something about focus management for parts of the app. Is that right? Did you resolve that? Or am I misremembering altogether?
I was going to bring that up.
That's one thing that we're kind of working on, although I think we know what we need to do. It was just like an implementation. There's other things that I'm kind of more like, I don't know what I need to do. Like I've been testing every part of the app in NVDA and JAWS. And so like I've noticed little things like let me think of some examples. I think there were just a couple that I was looking at. I might need to like look at the app. But like semantic HTML for, where's my tabs? For what is basically, no, that's the wrong one. I'm trying to find, we have so many different versions now. It's getting a little, okay, here we go. I can maybe show the screen. Yeah, so a couple little things, like just, I think that we're kind of, because this is not a real app and it's kind of like a learning exercise and a portfolio piece, I think we're trying to take on things like yes, there are ups and downs of using icons, but we also want it to kind of look nice and professional. And it's also an interesting learning experience to like how to do that in a good way, like how to do showing and hiding certain areas in a way that is going to be proper. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to ask about. So if I look at the markup here, I think we have like the ARIA controls on these detailed buttons. We have ARIA expanded.
Could you please zoom in by like one stage?
Yeah,
just
let me
zoom in
zoom
the
in.
dev tools.
I have a huge screen right now, and it's really
you should be able to
impossible.
just do Command plus and zoom in only that part. Yeah, there we go. That's good. Thank you so much.
Is this enough?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. Sorry.
No, that was helpful because yeah, I also can't see it. Oops. So I think that, yeah, so we have a label, it seems to work fine when I use test it in screen readers, but I'm just wondering if I'm missing anything. And I also see every time I see any examples of hidden areas and like show hide kind of areas, there's often things to do with like the tab index. Something will be like tab index -1, and I can never find an explainer for exactly, like I haven't been able to find a good explainer for when to do that and why.
Sure. Yeah. So tab index -1 is your way as the author, as the developer, of saying the thing that -1 is on is not usually focusable, but I want to make it focusable only by JavaScript, only by the occasion that the web author forces focus to go there. So that's different than adding 0, which makes it focusable like by tab always. Does that make sense?
Yes. So in the situation for show hide, how would that, like, for something like our list, where we're like, is that something that would apply here?
Probably not. If you could just bring that back. I don't think you're trying to manage focus in this case yet anyway, because merely expanding the details area doesn't really require you to force the user to go to a certain area of the app, as far as I understand. Does that sound right to you?
Needs to be focused. That does sound right to me, and that's what I thought. It just seemed like every single example I could find for showing and hiding things, even if it didn't have something focusable, would have like tab index -1, and I wasn't and I read that basically what you said, but I didn't, because I was seeing it in weird context, I didn't fully get it. That's really helpful. So
Yeah,
yeah, this is just, you can just continue to read it with a screen reader and it's fine.
The caveat to that is that basically as long as you, as long as at the end of, as long as the thing that gets opened is next to the original place in the DOM, that's okay. But you do want to manage focus if you're trying to send someone to somewhere else that's not adjacent. Does that make sense?
One more time, sorry.
Like looking at Tarragon as an example, imagine that's one bit, well, like just that part of the DOM tree is what we're talking about. So the thing you're expanding should be next to Tarragon rather than somewhere far away. Now, if it is far away and you want the user to see it, you would need to manage their focus. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, that does make total sense.
Because if I'm a screen reader user and this information is for some reason, obviously it's not, if it's for some reason somewhere else, I might not even know how to get to that part of the DOM tree.
Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's another good example. We've really tried to make sure everything is very like orderly in the structure. Another issue in this area that we have, it's a little annoying. Each one of these is also inside of a list. I wanted to use a definition list, but that presented me with problems due to limits of HTML because I couldn't wrap the combination of a DT and a DD in something, so it would break on the next line, making it very confusing at certain views, and I wanted it to like wrap together. So I ended up putting these as some very unfortunate spans, and each one inside of an LI. So LI with 2 spans, LI with 2 spans. And something that I found kind of weird when I tested it in JAWS and NVDA is that there's no like pause at all between the list items, but it does kind of pause after purchases. So it's kind of like purchases, 3 last purchase, August 11th, next purchase, August 29th. So I was reading different ways to try to fix that. And I don't know if you have any suggestions. I have some people say put in a period and a span and make it visually hidden, but then Braille users will see it. And like, it's one of those things that I can only find hacks.
I think that for now, that's one of those things you'd leave in and wait for users to give you feedback on, because the information is available and we can't, unfortunately, we can't always make it ideal for everybody, but it might not be worth the time spent spinning your wheels until you have meaningful feedback that you can use to then help the user have a better experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good to know. I kind of get the impression from using a screen reader, and I've turned it down to very slow, that probably people who use it all the time are more used to processing information that is slightly weird. That is
a very essential thing to remember as you're building out things, whether it's this thing or anything in the future, is that for those of us who have spent our entire lives divining meaning from looking at stuff, our ability to parse sequential bits of audio information is probably not nearly as developed as someone who's doing that for a living. And so we don't want to assume for them that we understand how they would build a model of what's going on, or that they would need more help than they actually need to parse what's going on.
Makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah, does anybody else have questions? I feel like I've talked so much.
Anyone?
I wanted to get your thoughts on that issue that Yenli mentioned. So when you click on the delete button here on the application, it opens a modal, and they've done a really great job of trapping the focus within those 2 buttons in the modal and allowing it not to go back into the app. So what ends up happening though is when you close that modal, the focus is then lost. And so those buttons are being mapped in, and so setting a ref on them becomes quite challenging. So is the option that would be best to use JavaScript and set like a specific ID on each of those buttons and then return the focus back based on that ID? Or like how does one handle that? Because I know modals can get very, very tricky.
Yeah, modals are the subject of much derision in the accessibility community, as you probably know, April.
Yeah.
So there's no one-size-fits-all answer I can give, but the best answer I can give is that it needs to go somewhere. Focus needs to go somewhere other than into the nether, because it might not end up somewhere good if the browser tries to decide on its own. Usually you want to move focus to the next logical thing, and the next logical thing is in itself a whole umbrella of context-dependent possibilities, right?
Yes. Especially in this case when they could be deleting the item that they just came from.
Yes, exactly. So in that case, there are two possible sort of user experience paths that happen. The first path is that the user does not delete the thing that they came here to delete. And so they should go back to the thing that opened the modal. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. The second thing is they do delete the thing that they came to delete. So where the heck does the focus go? And that's a whole question that you can answer on your own. You
I
could do
can tell you
something.
what I was thinking.
Go ahead,
for an
please.
issue. And I had some test code like doing this, but was just, you know, the struggle. I could do this in vanilla JS in my sleep, but React is weird. But I was thinking of trying to do it like go to the previous item, probably on the checkbox, since you might remember what the previous item was if you're tabbing in. If there isn't a previous item, go to the next item. If there aren't any more items because you deleted them, go to the add button. Is that
I sent a link to an application I built when I did a tutorial for the MDN, which you are all welcome to read if you'd like to. But in that application, you can see the UX that I decided on for what happens when you delete something. So if you want to go ahead and go through the process of deleting something, I went up to the heading that lists out the number of items, because then the user is not required to remember what was in what order, and it's still near to the collection that they were originally inside of.
That is a good idea too.
Yeah, that kind of leans a little bit towards the suggestion I had, which was to put them into the filter box, because then they're right at the top of the list. The next tab stop is going to take them to the beginning of the list, or they can then filter for specifically an item.
And if you want to go ahead and edit repeat, you can see kind of what I did for the UI. This is not for a Collab Lab thing. This just happens to be everyone does shopping list apps. If you want to edit it now, you'll see I managed focus there too, because the user needs to know that they're meant to go on to the input to start editing the name of the repeat item. So those are cues you can take if you'd like to. These are things I've been meaning to write sort of more for Collab, prompting me to think about these things. A lot of the work that I saw in your wireframe about explaining better what the app's supposed to do and when it does it is something I also want to write. So I might be taking this inspiration to actually get some homework done. So thank you all. Any other questions that I can help with?
I'll probably think of some, but I think we're coming up on time. So maybe I'll at you in Slack.
Sure. For the record, this section of the tutorial eventually at some point gets to the conditional rendering stuff and focus management. And Ander, I think you said that you weren't really sure how to do it in React.
I can do it in React with refs, but if it's very difficult to have a ref in certain situations, or passing it to a different component that's a particularly not a component that can, like a parent component or a sibling component, that's where I get confused, and I just like start doing like just vanilla JavaScript tags and very Madame.
React in some ways, by abstracting all this stuff away from us, makes it, hard to do those complex tasks. But the broad summary is that you want to use effects so that you can manage when focus happens. You want to use refs like you're already doing. And if there's trouble, I would be happy to help you think about the code itself in particular. But I picked the heading that you see here and that whole system of doing things precisely because of the thing that you just mentioned, which is that I didn't want to manage all that stuff. I wanted a known and discrete place that would be exactly the same every time. And I also tend to be the person who advocates for more headings in things to break down the UI, because they can be used as navigational way stops for someone who's using a screen reader or something similar. Cool. I feel like I've just been TED talking to everybody for the last hour. So anything else I can help with before I leave you all to your afternoons?
No, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. And please feel free to @ me on Slack with questions. We can start a thread, like Cameron suggested, like a mega thread for all this discussion. Anything else? I'm here for whatever. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
And great work again. Seriously, your app is so good. I didn't mean to say that I want to nitpick it. It's just that I'm trying to find something to do with my time here. So that's a high compliment that I have.
It makes me feel good that we're asking the same questions, because we've been having similar discussions and thinking about the same thing. So that's good to know.
Thank you all so much. Great job. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so I think the last piece on our agenda was the issues, which we don't physically have issues this time around, other than the ones that you guys have written, like, but we don't have Collab Lab specific issues. So I think the thing that I wanted to just kind of touch base is I know you guys have, you have a lot that you want to do. And, you know, just to kind of focus into the fact that you have a week before we have final demos. So making sure that you like have a plan, or if you have questions on how to break that up, or I guess that's kind of the discussion I wanted to kind of have today is how do we get from today to a week from now with the most number of things done?
I think we do have a plan. I think like what we're trying to do is by the end of the weekend, just sort of close everything that we've been doing for the past week and get us all onto a common branch again. And then I think we're gonna meet tomorrow night to like delegate out what will be the final tasks. And then all hopefully off of, you know, we'll all be working off the same thing. So
Yeah, now that we have oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, looking at your list of issues, I see that you're using tags for enhancement functionality, that kind of stuff. I would again suggest that tomorrow night, maybe tagging all of the remaining issues and making sure you understand which ones need to happen for the app to be functional and which one are enhancements, prioritizing based upon that.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, to make sure that your prioritization list includes the cut lists. So you know where you can start eliminating should you need to based on time and not impact the application. Let Yenli. Oh, but you're on mute, babe.
Yeah.
My mind is crazy. Anyhow, so to add to that, you can create your own tag in GitHub to say like, this is for this release, right? So you can come up with whatever name you want, or your final release, version 1, blah, and then tag those so you know in a quick look that these are the ones that we're going to get to, and things that you want to push off to say V2 or whatnot. That's another way to plan it. So those are things that if you have time, or not if you have time, it's probably a good idea to plan that early on. And then it'll look really good in your repo as something to showcase as well in interviews and stuff, as in like, this is how we organize, this is how we attack things, how we plan things, and how we achieve these things.
I think we might have already done a little of that with, I think maybe we added something to a backlog. We just put it in a backlog, and maybe it was like, we had a little discussion about possibly adding like off. And we don't think we have time this week. So I think we put that in the backlog, and maybe that can be like a future thing if one of the four of us feels like, you know, doing that in a version 2.
Great.
Yeah, no, great. It's good that you guys have already kind of been discussing that, because, you know, having just come off a big major launch release, I can guarantee you there were things that we wanted in there that didn't just quite get there, and they went into the 1.1, you know, milestone. So, and they made it in there very shortly after, but nonetheless, you know, we did have to make some concessions in order to hit our launch date. Yanni?
So I do want to point out that next week, because it's a final demo, to one, get your code to production to a certain point of polish. So give yourself time, you know, give yourself time, and then also plan your demo as a team, how you would demo, and give that polished demo would be really great. Because like, if let's say you want to share your weekly syncs in a job interview or in anything, which one would it be? This was probably the best one to share. You could share all of them, but if you had to pick one or two. So that's something to keep in mind, is prep for the demo, do the work that you need, and be sure to cut off in parts and not be burning the midnight oil Saturday night, pushing code, trying to do all the awesome things, because you don't have to do all the awesome things in one night. You can still do awesome things after the demo. So just wanted to make sure everybody is making, making time for priority and not to kill everybody's time in getting this to be perfect and amazing. Although I know it will be perfect and amazing, whatever it is that you end up with, based on the design.
Is the
Yes.
demo just for our group next week? So not with the larger TCL?
Oh, no, not with the larger TCL. I think there's talk about wanting to do like a bigger thing. I think that might be something else as a separate meeting, but Stacy and Andrew most likely will be attending because they are very interested and would like to see the final product. And a lot of this is the reason why we have been recording all of this and putting it public is that it is something for you to use as artifacts for your job search or just to showcase your skills. And yeah, so that is the aim. So you can approach it as the same way as when you're building features at a real job. That's the same thing, right? Like at the very end, you can pretend that this final demo could be the big one that would be a board meeting or all to engineering or to product and at all hands, which is a very common thing that could happen. So it'd be good to approach with that mindset.
Yeah, I know my team, we do every 2 months, I think, we do a check-in on what everybody's been working on, and it's not uncommon for you to be asked to represent your team to put together, a demo of what your team's been working on.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. And do you guys have any additional questions before we get moving towards getting all those things closed, as you said?
All right, it's been
Awesome.
exciting seeing all the work being done.
Yeah, and keep throwing out questions as you run into things as you have been. I'm keeping a little finger on the pulse, not watching every move, but definitely available if you have additional questions or run into blocks or something. All right.
Cool.
All right.
Enjoy your week. Have
Have a
fun.
good week, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.